Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sales Chatter, the podcast where we try to get 10,000 reps to hit a million GP. I'm your co host, Ryan Mohammed. With me is the amazing president and CEO of RGTX Logistics Solutions, my main man, Jeff Dickinson. How you doing this morning, brother?
Good, my man. How about you? Did you have a good weekend?
I had, with those NFL games, those wild card games, whoo, I went to bed in the third of the Jacksonville game.
That's nuts,
And then I woke up in the morning, man, I was like, what the hell? Like, why? Why did I miss this? I feel like NFL. I'm a big basketball fan, but when
right?
you watch basketball, you really only got to really watch like the last 5 minutes because like you don't have to watch the whole game. It's really not that important. But the NFL, like it's crazy. Even though you do have to watch the last 5 minutes of the NFL, seeing
Yep.
everything lead up to it was awesome. But what was your weekend like?
Oh, it was great. I was actually watching the Jacksonville game at a bar in Atlantic City, and it was 27-0, and I was like, I'm out of here, man. I'm just like out of here. So we were just walking around, didn't watch any television, and then the next day when we woke up, I heard on the NFL it was like 31-30. Are you kidding me? It was like I couldn't believe it. And of course, my beloved Giants took out the Vikings, which was there's a lot of people this morning. They're like wide open. Like, did that really happen? I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it was a well. You know what? I feel like Lamar Jackson being out of Baltimore. Maybe we should turn this into a football show. But you know what? Let's get started.
That's
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
Yeah, we should definitely turn this to like Monday morning quarterback. Maybe get some more viewership and see how it's going. I didn't catch. Do you know? Maybe I'll Google it after. But who won the? I think the Ravens played last night. They were like the late game,
yes.
I think.
Yeah. Who did they play again?
Who did the Ravens play? Oh, it was just Ravens. I know. Oh, they played the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals won.
Yeah,
So
Bengals won. Yeah,
Bengals
yeah.
won. So
I don't know. I
let's
fell asleep early.
falling asleep early there. But let's talk about that for a little bit before we kind of get into this week's theme. Who you got for the Super Bowl?
Oh my God, I don't know. After this weekend's games, it's a real crapshoot. I mean, some like Jacksonville, you call them out, right? And it's like there's no way. Then you got the Giants, who had a horrible year last year, that really started playing. Now they look like a solid team. They took out the Vikings. I mean, it's just like I don't know. I mean, what people thought before the weekend and what they feel now after the weekend, I'm telling you, it's just swinging, man. I don't know. I think I'm a Bills fan too, but diehard Giants, and I'm like, man, they may have a chance. They're up against a tough team, the Eagles. For the conference, and I don't know if they beat the Eagles. I've
Watch
seen
out.
them twice beat the Patriots for the Super Bowl wins, man. I don't know. This could
Probably
be
the
one of those years. I don't know.
Probably the great. Well, outside of like that Atlanta, I think New England, where Tom Brady came back and won it. I thought like the Giants and the Patriots was probably my favorite Super Bowl ever. Brady getting hit in the mouth and kind of go from there. But it's kind of funny you say that because like the Bills, they look like they were gonna run away with it, and they were
They
iffy. They were shaky. They were shaky. So let's get to today's topic. Even though we'd love to talk football, maybe you and I will do football show or like some sports show outside of this live at 11 o'clock every day. But good
There you
morning to
go.
Damon. Good morning to Barry. This week, first and foremost, Jeff, it's a holiday in the U.S. It's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I believe it is.
Yes, it is.
And I want to wish everybody happy day. I know some basketball games are getting started at noon today, so I'll try to do some work and lead up to that. But let's talk about as we're getting to prospecting this week, cold calling.
My
I
favorite.
Yeah, I think it's and we're going from a mindset of both of like, hey, you're kind of starting, and like where you kind of progress to now. Because I think cold calling, I hate when I see posts that people say like, hey, cold calling's dead, cold calling is not relevant anymore. I'm sorry, but this is probably the best channel. Stop. You and I believe in the same thing. If there's an issue, forget the emails, forget leaving voicemails, get that person on the phone. Hit them with the actual news. Jeff, when you got into the industry, switching over from logistics manager to RGTX Logistics Solutions, which your first year, you mentioned your
Yeah.
story as well. What was cold calling looking like to you?
You know, it was horrible. It really was. I mean, I'm honest. My integrity is first and foremost. $9,000 I made in the first 12 months. I mean, really, a lot of people would have just said, "I'm out of here." It's how do you live on something like that? But with my background and everything like that, I had to just tap in because I wasn't a sales guy. I've been a logistics guy for well over 35 years, and I wanted to get on that side. So I still, I'm honest. I don't like doing cold call because I know of a better way, and we'll surely have go into these discussions this week on that. But it's to each his own and how they want to pursue that. Is cold calling dead? For the ones who are experts in doing that, no. The ones that aren't, they would probably say, "Yeah, it doesn't work," and all this other kind of stuff. But I say this term, and I hate the term, but it's really meaningful. Is that there's different ways to skin a cat, and if you go about it and you have great connections, you can do it a lot of things without cold calling.
Perfect. So I am in the sense of that before I even pick up the phone, before I send an email, before I send a video or anything like that, I got to have a sequence. I'm very sequence based and what I kind of do on my end here. So as we're seeing, good morning, Nick, to see you here as we're kind of getting into cold calling. Jeff, let me ask you this. Are you, like you said, you're a research guy. What do you think about volume cold calling?
I don't believe in it. You know, the way I see it, and I always sit in my seat like right here as a shipper because I was tormented for 35 years because I ran big operations. So there was a lot of transportation spend out there that was available to brokers and asset carriers, and they all wanted a piece of the pie. And the asset-based carriers, they were professionals. They had their reps, their carrier reps. They came in, they kind of knew the business. And then you had the brokers that called you day in and day out. They didn't know anything about me. They didn't know about the company, the product line, where we went, so forth and so on. So I'm like a big deal in researching,
Yeah.
getting that knowledge, understanding who you're reaching out to, the company's background, how did they evolve, who did they do business with, who were they connected with. And if you have those connections, there's so many other different ways of doing it. Like last year, I said, if I did 5 phone calls, that's a lot. That's a
Mhm.
lot. So I know that for me, it's quality over quantity every day of the week, every hour of the week, every month of the year. Because I did that, if you remember correctly, and not so long ago, I did that analysis about time.
Mhm.
And to me, time is money. And that's in operations, that's in cold calling, all that kind of stuff. And I know for a fact that if you do a cold call and you enter that information into a CRM, that's about a 7-minute concept.
Process.
Of course it goes of course it goes up and down because some calls are longer, some are shorter. But
So here's the way that I utilize cold calls in my prospecting. I do it a little bit the opposite. Every time I make a cold call, Jeff, my intention of, and I feel like you should have an intention of every cold call. My intention of every cold call is to book a meeting, to book a scheduled meeting, and that's where I get my research. So I will always make my cold calls, whether it be whatever the amount and number is, but I'm not doing research before I make the cold call to book the meeting. I'll only do research when I'm booking that when we have a scheduled meeting in our calendars. So we know Jeff knows as a logistics manager, he's got a call with Ryan for 30 minutes on Thursday at 2 p.m. That's where we're going to get into our actual discovery.
so,
And the
so
reason why I've done,
I have to ask you, I have to
yeah,
interrupt you.
of course,
So what's how are you going to make me interested to take that half an hour call? Because
of course.
sitting in that shipper's seat in a high volume logistics operation, I know I don't have that much time. And I've spoken to
Well,
many people here that will agree with me wholeheartedly that it has to be something that's special. especially if you get like over 30 calls a day from
Yep.
brokers. It has to be special.
So
So
that's where for me, Jeff, is that's where my personality kind of shines. I'll do a little bit of research on the person exactly. So let's say, hey, if I'm gonna go talk to Jeff, let me go take a look at his LinkedIn. Let me take at his socials. I always kind of say, like you always say, there's always one way to skin the cat. Everybody
yeah,
knows I'm a dog guy. So if I see a dog, like that's kind of like bait for me. So I'll have that human to human conversation, just like, and mind you, my first calls, those to book a meeting is less than 30 seconds. Call in, I say my pitch, boom, this is what we're doing. Are you interested? Yes or no. I'm about low friction, so it's not forceful. Because Jeff, when I worked at my first job, we weren't told that. We were told get the prospect on the phone, and then rile off a whole bunch of questions like your discovery call. I'm not about that. Forget that. That doesn't work for me. So I'm saying,
I'll agree with you with that.
yep, yeah, exactly. So with that being said, and Nick kind of brings here, I've done okay. So there's two types of research, right? Research in terms of I got to know who I'm talking to and what company I'm going after, but I'm
Sure.
not looking at like their DCs. I obviously know what they ship, but I don't know their volume. I'm not doing that stuff. I'm not looking into the news. When I've already booked that scheduled meeting, Nick and Jeff, that's when the research comes in. I start looking at earnings reports. I start looking at their DCs. I start looking at all their product lines that they've done. I see if they've had any mergers. I do all those things after, but the way that I see it, I'm not going to waste my time on research for somebody who's not going to be a fit for me. If we don't have a scheduled meeting, that's just me. I don't have all the time in the day because hey, if I got 50 people on my list, I'm not
Mhm.
going to wait. Like you said, 7 minutes. Think about that. 7 minutes times 50, right? So for me, the most important thing for me is to schedule a booked meeting. And that's where I kind of put my feet up and discovery calls. Jeff, like as you kind of said, we always kind of go back and forth because we don't
Yeah.
necessarily always kind of have fun with that.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell the audience, for yourself, what is, if you do have to make a cold call, and like you said, you're a spider guy, right? You're talking from a
I'm
customer,
definitely a spider
from a
guy.
referrals. And that's and another point. When I'm making those book meeting calls, I'm referencing referrals, right? So I'm saying, hey, you want to call my customer? Have a conversation with them in that 30 seconds. But with that being said, Jeff, I want to get your thoughts on um, doing the research while you have like a scheduled meeting to so you're going to be talking to X customer on Friday at 2 p.m. Whatever the time is, but that's what it is. What's
Yeah,
kind of your strategies
and
there?
so let me just go back. Let's go back to the analogy that I did. I'll do it really fast, right? So
Yep.
when you have quantity of calls and you have to do let's just call it 50 calls a day, right? 250 a week, 1,000 a month, 3,000 every 3 months, right?
Hmm.
At 7 minutes per call, you're at 21,000 minutes. Okay. Out of that, 3,000 calls, about 6% or about 180 will be qualifiers that you'll have in your bucket, right? Then out of that, I think it's 0.06% or
Yeah.
3.6 clients you'll get on board. But now, out of all those calls, those 3.6 clients that you bring on board. Now, remember, when you're doing a lot of those calls, and I worked for a brokerage and I ran the intermodal, a whole different thing that I do not work on now. It's a lot of pressure to do that, and you're looking for 500K to a million, somewhere in that range. Some people look at that 100,000. So you figure if you're going after that 500K to a million and there's 3.6 customers, right, that you bring on board, the tops that you're going to make out of them, if you get all of their business, is 1.5 million to 3 point something million
Hmm.
every 3 months, right? So if you took the way I look at it logically for myself, if I have 3.6 customers and I concentrate on the 10 million to 20 million out of those, and I use that 21,000 minutes to do top notch in your trenches, under the weeds research on each one of those companies that fall into my niche, my niche, my mode, geographics, everything, and I grab one of those 1.3, those 3.6 customers in that 1 month, I'm way ahead of the game. I'm
Hmm.
way ahead of the game. And I'm not using all of that 21,000 minutes because I have customers that are already on board. So now I'm focusing on the customers that I have already in house,
Yeah.
right? And I'm giving them better service because it's not spent on making those cold calls the way that I look at, right?
Mm.
Now I'm talking to my customers and I'm finding out who their manufacturers is. It's very easy for the data because that data is already being brought in. I know the vendors that they're pulling from. All right. I know how many do a week, a month, or whatever. So it's very easy to talk smack with one of their suppliers and manufacturers, raw material, whatever. And now you have a name, Bob. And now you know Sally, who's one of the manufacturers. I can reach out to Sally and I can say, Bob highly recommended me. I know about your business. I know how many things are coming. I know the kind of problems that you have. And it just starts rolling off the tongue without even really thinking about it because you know the business like the back of your hand. That's what I do. And I know we disagree.
So I think
Disagree. Let's put it this way.
We could talk football all day. We're good friends. And here's what I actually want to shed a light on this, Jeff. That because I was watching on. Sorry, I was reading some content on the weekend, and everyone's about like hustle culture and everything like that. So I feel like everybody who's watching needs to understand as well. Like you have two types of logistics. Let's call them freight brokers, right? You got the
Right.
cradle to the grave guys. They're the
Yep.
guys who do everything, and then you have guys like myself where I'm a seller. I sell and then I have a team behind me that manages the accounts, manages everything for me. So I think our mindsets are a little bit different because I'm just a seller. I'm not wasting time in my CRM. I'm just here to really sell and continue to bring on new business. I talk to my customers 2-3 times a week, make sure everything is good, all that stuff, but they're not dealing with me on a day-to-day basis. And mind you, my customers are not dealing with my team on daily. It's usually you got your logistics manager, but then you got your load planners. Your load planners are going to be dealing with your ops team, right? And you kind of go from there.
Yeah,
So
you're handing it off.
exactly. You're completely handing it off. And that's where my mindset comes from, where I'm able to make these calls and have these things because I have the time to. But let's talk a little bit about cradle to the grave because, like, just like you said, I would say maybe 90-95% of freight agents out there, they are in that cradle to grave mode, right? So they're doing all that work. And like you said, you're having the conversation, you're able to see the carriers. Complete full transparency, I haven't booked a carrier like once. Like that's not in my realm of what I essentially do here. So
Mm.
that's why I'm able to make these calls and do those things because I have the time allotted to it. But getting back to the cradle to the grave, Jeff, have you ever seen both models? And I'd love to get your thoughts on both models, and just so we
Sure.
can have a mindset for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, and you've got your hunters and your farmers, right? Pretty much the ones that are the client development managers or whatever that they simply go out to seek, find, and destroy, sort of speaking, to find those clients. And once they bring it in house, now I was a closer. I wasn't a client development manager. My boss would find those people, and then once they got the meeting, he would pull me in, and I was very successful on getting a lot of people. As long as I got my foot in the door, I knew the operations like the back of my hand because, again, the experience that I had, not a lot have it, but those who do have that kind of experience knows where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And when you hit that ground, you're not taking baby steps. You can run through there and you can really find out where the faults are. And that's what I'm very good at. So I learned from my boss on that side, about doing that. He was the hunter, the farmer. You grab it, and then all of a sudden you have your backroom support, right? So now you're taking that little piece of whatever it might be. It might be the negotiations, the analytics, or whatever, where you have a department, right? So you're asking for an NDA or something like that from your shipper and saying, I need 3 months. You're going to take that, you hand it off to those experts. They do it. They come back. They say, here's what we can do for you, but I've done that myself. Here's what you're spending. Here's what we can come in through, and then they start doing all the background stuff. Like you're saying, you're a hunter basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you got all those farmers, and you're going to have a CSR, and you're gonna delegate a specific account to a CSR, and the CSR is going to take over that account plus a few other ones. So they'll manage maybe five accounts a day or whatever, doing the track and trace and all of that kind of stuff. Then you got your freight bill payment, and you got that department. So there's just so many different touch points in the operation. And then you've got your single guys like myself. I got good backroom support. I have a partner and stuff like that. So we kind of switch it up. But I'm a trench guy. I love getting in there. I like seeing those problems. I do the booking. I talk to my carriers and everything because I've done that for a long time. I enjoy that collaboration. So those are the two different kinds of situations. I don't think I'm far off on that. I mean, 'cause
No, no,
that's
you're perfect. You're exactly like that, and I feel like that's what like that's where our understanding this week is going to be amazing because we're having like you said, I'm a hunter slash closer. You're basically all of it. You're the all around thing, and you know what? I did do that. Like the first job I had, and I'll go into a quick story while we get it back to it. But the reason why I switched to the second company to get like an ops support was that I went to so I was cradle to the grave. I was managing a 50K GP book every month just by myself, and I had one logistics operations person, but it was really me doing 90% of it because I want to control everything to kind of make sure. Biggest thing tip is don't think that you can never get help. But anyways, I went on vacation for the first time because I earned that vacation. Like this was my first all inclusive, Jeff, because I earned it. I worked my butt off. I took my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and I won't forget that every single day I was working. And I was like, holy crap. And mind you, I did delegate before I left. I was like, hey, if anything happens, reach out to this person, all these things. But then I would see, I'll never forget this. One of my big piping customers, they sent out like 100 load RFP that was due in like 2 days. I was like, okay, well, I got to get there. And, you know, I just didn't get to enjoy myself. So then I left and then I went to my other company. And then my girlfriend, we got married and we went on my honeymoon. And Jeff, let me tell you the difference night and day. I literally took my work phone. I always carry two phones. I'm a person. I don't like to have one phone. I like to have a personal and a business phone. I took my business phone. I put that in the safe every morning. Came back. I opened it at lunch. Take a look at it. Everything was good. Everything was being managed. Put it back in the safe. Go have some margaritas. Go hang out at the pool. So that for me works for me for like the life balance. And I think when it comes to cold calls, as we're getting back to prospecting, you just allot yourself to more times to actually go after those, like you said, go after those bigger fish that is going to be worth your time. Both you and we have a funny first customer, which we're talking about, balsamic vinegar Gret customer, right? I remember you kind of saying that, and myself here, where, hey, not a ton of volume, but we just have it because they're great people. It's a great company and we just want to help somebody out. But to
that.
cold calls, Jeff, um, is somebody coming in new? What do you recommend? A completely brand new? Do you believe that, hey, get in the trenches, hit that 1,000 calls to learn the business? What are your kind of thoughts of somebody completely brand
You know,
new?
yeah, I'm just being honest this way. You know, I'm a quality guy, not a quantity guy.
Yep.
I don't believe in making 100 calls, 50, 100 calls a day and hitting that quantity because let's face it, you start getting into that script mode because
Hmm.
you're trying to hit those numbers and you're saying the same things over and over again. And what's missing is the translation and the empathetic part of human nature. Your game is to make that phone call and just see if you can get any kind of response.
Yeah.
A lot of them I did. I was like, oh, you got kidding me, and I just hung up the phone. They didn't want to call Jeff. They just didn't want.
Yeah.
It's like John Brewer. We shake our head, or Tony Darnell. We just shake our head like, I can't believe this is happening again. I mean, what's wrong with these people? So you get this negative feeling. And the thing is that what you have, and I got to tell the truth on this, just like we red flag carriers that come in and shippers who they say they do things a certain way, and then the trucker finds out it's not that way, and they go, I'll never do business with that shipper again. And granted, the broker too, because the broker didn't do a good job finding out all the intricacies about the shipper and telling them. So the same thing happens with a shipper and a broker. They'll red flag brokers
They
left,
should.
right, because it's like they don't know when to stop. It's like you didn't do anything. You didn't do things right the first time when you reached out to me. Well, what's changed right now? And then what happens is that because of poor training, it gives the company a bad name. So if you're a really good agent and there's multiple agents out there, those bad, unethical agents, they do have an impact on a good one because they're like, I'm not doing business with that agency or that broker because I had god awful experience with them.
Yep.
And then you have to go into the explanation, well, I'm much different than that guy and everything. And so you're trying to convince them that you're not them,
Yeah.
you're yourself and stuff like that. So, you know, I don't, I'm being honest. It's tough. I don't believe in going out there and hammering the phone calls. I think, like I keep on saying, there's a different way to skin that cat
Yep.
and be very successful and have that work-life balance and still make a ton of money without raking your clients over the coals.
100%. And that's the thing, because I've spoken to many shippers before where they'll get calls from like the same company like 2 3 times a day. My mindset, Jeff, when I'm making cold calls, I'm only a one call every 48 hours kind of guy, but it's not a phone call. It'll be like a call, 48 hours. I'll send an email, I'll send a video, different things. But I give that 48 hours because I want to hit 10 to 12 touches in 30 days. And that's what worked for me. But I've never had a customer saying, hey, you're messaging me too much, or you're annoying, or leave me the hell alone. It's just respecting their time. Like you said, a logistics manager is
They
busy
don't
with their day of. They're probably sitting at their desk, grabbing lunch, eating, drinking their coffee really quick before they go into their next meeting, or they got to go to the dock, or they got to do something. So if they accidentally pick up, and maybe they're expecting somebody else, maybe they're expecting their other carrier to give them a update, and they just pick up the phone and it's just a freight broker like calling them for there. But it's just genuinely having conversations. I love that when you're talking about get rid of the scripts. I hate scripts. Never do a script. I'm only scripted for the first line I say when I call somebody before I book that meeting. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward from there. But get rid of the scripts. Be authentic. Be yourself. Especially when it comes to prospecting, cold calling. Because Jeff, you probably agree with me on this. If you're making a cold call and somebody picks up, you only got one chance. You got one chance only.
That's
You
it.
can that you really do. And
And you know why you don't use the script? Because it basically tells them they know it's all monotone. There's no real feeling.
yeah,
There's no feeling behind it. Um, it's just a really bad impression. I mean, it really is. It's like, you know, it's not real.
mhm,
It's not real. It's not authentic. You know,
yeah,
it, don't use the script. Be yourself. If you have the experience that's needed to take care of that customer, you don't need a script because you've got it in back. You don't have to try to convince them because you already got it convinced in yourself. You can rattle that off your tongue like that because you know your business. You don't
yeah,
have to. And then it's in this business. Even if you're a manager, managing your troops or whatever, you have to be like a psychologist. You're managing many different personalities. No two people are the same. You have to be a chameleon type because you have to shed your skin and be very adaptability and be adaptable. And you have to be a great listener. Less talk, more listening, and then be able to attack when you hear those right trigger mechanisms that's coming from that prospect or whoever you're talking. Because if you know your stuff and you're staying in your lane and following that path, it's going to be easy. It really will
yeah,
be easy. You don't have to convince them because you're talking his language or her language. It's the most important thing in sales is getting on their wavelength. So there's a mutual understanding. You might not be doing business that day, but I can assure you, if you touch base and you're on the same page, they'll ask for another meeting when they have time. And when I do it, if I do it, I'm working on your schedule. Tell me when
yeah.
you're available. Send me an email. I won't call you. I'm not going to bug you.
Exactly.
If
And
you
I
get
think like for me, it's like playing the long game, Jeff, instead of going for that short game. I know that for me, it's like, hey, do you have freight? I don't talk freight on that booking
I
discovery
don't
call.
talk
It's
great
like,
at all.
no, there's no need to, because anybody can do it, right? So I'm big on like playing the long game. I don't ask for an RFP. I don't ask for anything. I'm just, hey, when can I get some time, some unsolicited time? And Nick's bringing some amazing points here. Like, you want to make them remember your name in the right way. So for me, you and I are kind of like the same. We're good people. We're people who can like have conversations with people, right? So for me, I use humor a lot. I like to be myself and let them remember that way, right? And if it's not gonna be a fit, and Nick kind of brings up a point here when he's saying, hey, you wouldn't use a script when you try talking to a girl that you like. You like them as much as you do. If you're forceful, you'll never go on a date. And it's true, right? You got to look at it fast
I mean,
stage. Right?
that is true. But let me put it in perspective. I've never met Nick before, or Cameron, or yourself, right? but we've spoken, we've had text messages on LinkedIn and everything. If I went to an event, Nick Romer, he owns this, and go like that. No, you'd be like, hey, Nick, man, what's happening? Be yourself, damn it. I mean, it's so easy. That's the relationship building. You don't have to pretend to be somebody that you're not. If you know that face and you've spoken to them, whether it's DMs or conversing on LinkedIn, you're gonna go up. Hey, Nick, I'm Jeff, man. We've spoken. Glad to meet you. That's the way you do it on the phone. You don't have to fake it to make it. Just be you. The way that you would do it to someone you've never met before, that you're in an event. Like if you walk into a booth, how are you going to start that conversation? Hey, I've seen those products out there. That's it. That's selling right there. You're selling yourself. You're acknowledging a product. You're talking about them. You ask them about their personal life, and you just roll it. You don't have to really try. The only problem you would have is if you're an introvert, you're going to fail, man. But just be yourself. You don't have to go out of your way. You don't.
And I like that you talk about like meeting, like going to like trade show and stuff like that, because I believe that those are, I use that a lot for my cold calling too. I turn those calls into warm. So when you go to like those trade shows, and we'll talk about this a different time. I think we already talked about this a couple months ago, but for me, my method is it's only sales guys at the trade booths, or like the owners or anything like that. You'll never find the person that you need to speak with. However, you go there, you make that impression, you talk to the sales guys, you talk their ear off, they talk your ear off, you get to find out the inner workings, that they're free to give all that knowledge rather than somebody calling somebody to get that knowledge. In person will always be better than all over the phone, right? And I do this, a tip that I kind of do for myself is like I'll always take a picture with that person and I'll send it to the logistics manager and be like, hey man, I met Jeff at this show. Awesome guy. He told me that he loves the Braves. Great guy and stuff like that. He said that, hey, you're the guy who handles logistics. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Are you up or down? And then kind of go from there. So I think that it's just utilizing being human. And that's the one thing I left in the description is cold calling, but any way that you can do to make it warm to that they know you to an extent, it's just going to work out in your benefit. And I just actually want to come back to what you're kind of saying about quality over quantity. I think, and this is what I believe in myself here, is that if you're completely brand new into the industry, you do have to, like, this is just me, you do have to make 1,000 calls to see what is out there, to hear what you got to get your, we talked about storytelling last week. You need to have those 1,000 calls to get stories back from logistics managers, from either carriers or things like that. So I think that they should be making 1,000. They it's like, for me, it's like batting practice, right? It's like not, you're just going to go into the game cold, right? It's like you got to take those swings in batting practice, figure out, hey, maybe I need to go a little bit low, go a little bit high. But I think if you're completely brand new, if you know what you're doing, do whatever you want. But if you're completely brand new, I'm a volume guy.
And you know something? I think this should be mandatory in any sales, in any brokerage. I'm going to assume that it's true, and it is true. They have connections at DCs and warehouses all over the place. Why don't you make it a regiment that every single new person that comes in, that you do a tour of a warehouse, have them spend a day or two on the floor watching everything that's going on. I worked in the trenches. I loaded trucks, forklifts. I did it all. I really, truly did. And it was the best experience that anybody can learn, because you're in the trenches, under those weeds. You understand those problems that exist. When you're new and you're coming in and you're wet behind the ears, you have absolutely no clue. That's why I say, get down and dirty, man. Get in the trenches. Do the damn work. Understand why those little things move the way that they do. And lo and behold, you're going to find yourself falling into one category, or maybe multiple categories, that you just love and adore, man. And that's when you don't have to work, because it just comes natural. I'm a strong believer in that. You have to get in and do it. If you're just watching or listening, it's very difficult. And then that's where that depression and that failure comes in, because you don't know what you're doing. You don't have the proper training, and you're forced to make all these phone calls, and you're just killing yourself, because those people are going to say, hey, John Smith, this guy's been calling me. And it's a small community out there. It really is. And Bob will talk to Jane. Did you get a call from John? Yeah, I did. Did he talk about? Yeah. It's I just think it's the wrong way. I think there's needs to be more in-depth training, that goes well beyond the book and what a manager tells you to do, how to do it, what to say on the phone. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not street smart guy. I really
Yeah, I
am.
should be pitching those to like companies. And the way that I've kind of seen it, especially, I want to only talk about like brand new reps coming in because that's what's kind of be beneficial. But the way that I've kind of seen it is that these guys are kind of like hired at like minimum wage. It's usually like through a job fair. They kind of blast out their resume, and Indeed and things like that. And when they kind of come on for onboarding, it's not by themselves. So it's not, you're not going to get that one-to-one training. There's always like two or three or even more reps starting at the same time, right?
Mhm.
So it's like you got a group of guys who are, and that's good. Like for me, when I got hired at the second company, I had a guy who was hired with me as well. And we kind of got that camaraderie together because the other guys, they're all experienced. They weren't making calls. Like the other sales, like we had 5 sales reps on the team, me and the new guy and 3 other guys, and they weren't making calls at all. The 3 guys weren't. So I could lean on that other rep myself and kind of basically build our business from there from zero. But I think it's like important. Like I agree with you that everybody has connections. They should have like especially if you're going for an asset based company to be a freight broker, you have a DC, obviously. You have like a yard. You should be able to kind of go in there for a day, shadow everything that's kind of going on. And even the logistics manager, like you said, shadow everybody, even if it's like an hour with that logistics manager to kind of see.
I mean,
Yeah.
go to a XBO cross dock, at nighttime, to see how those shipments go into a cross dock and to get, from one trailer to the next, and you see the boards, you see everything that's going on where the rubber, hits the road. I mean, I love doing that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like, you know what? To me, going into sales, if like the feeling I would get would be talking to a medical team, and I'm not a surgeon yet. I have to go and sell something to them that I have no idea. That's how lost you are. I mean,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
be like mumbling and bumbling all over the freaking place. That's what these kids are feeling. You have to
Yep.
have that empathetic feeling for them, because it's going to destroy them. They feel like crap when they
They
leave.
feel like crap, and the mute button on their like phone is like their best friend. Like, hey, put them on mute. Hey, Joey, what's this guy saying? This and this and this and things like that. But coming back to it, I think what we do need to understand, especially when you're making cold calls out there, is that this industry, Jeff, is a
And
relationship based industry. This is not a one time sale. Like I feel like strategies are different. Like let's say I was to sell you a cell phone, my strategy would be different. I'd be all about volume, getting everybody because hey, if I call 100 people and 10 people say yes, that 10 people is adding to my paycheck, and that's a one-time sale. But you got to remember, in logistics, it's a customer relationship service, right? It's not a one-off. You're not going to get one shipment and be like, woohoo, I won the race. Right? So it's continuously kind of going from there and playing the long game from there. As we're getting, oh wow, we've been talking for a while. This is going to be a good week. This is going to be
yeah,
fun.
well, for
All
sure.
right. So for me, my last thoughts, and I'll get you to end off on your last thoughts. I think when it comes to cold calling, everybody, not everybody, but what's worked for me. So I'm not preaching to anybody. What's worked for me is setting up those cold calls to book longer meetings. You're basically kind of an appointment booker at that point. You relate to them, figure out what they kind of do, who they are as a person, but don't do the research until you have that booked meeting, and then you kind of go there. My rule of thumb, Jeff, is to have 3 to 5 booked meetings a day, scheduled. So that's about, what is that? That's 5 times 5, 25 meetings a week at most. I'm probably averaging maybe 15 meetings a week, and then probably close maybe 3, 4 of them, right? But that's kind of like my mindset. Would love to get yours as we wrap up today's prospecting cold calling theme.
Yeah, I would say that I'll make it real short. If you're coming into the business, yeah, you have to make those cold calls. Once you get those clients on board, back off the cold calls. Pay more attention on those clients that are in there. Start learning about their business, who they do business with, and why and how, and all of that. And then you'll start finding that you're really starting to go through the weeds and starting to find that path. And next thing you know, you're getting more revenue, less calls. You're spending more time on your clients. You're building that trust, that foundation for long-term business relationships. Most of mine have been with me for 2, 3 years. That's the way I live to do business. I believe in clients for life. And
Yep.
if you treat them well, they'll be there with you for the long term. But if you're just going in there for that transactional type business and it's one hit, the one hit wonders, sort of speaking, I don't know. I'm not into that. I'll just be perfectly honest with you. So, I mean, I understand if you're coming freshly into the business, you have to make those calls. Once you get a client on board, find everything you need about that client and start working them, start working back into them. You're going to make them happy, and you'll be very happy as well because they gave you a reference and you put a feather in their cap, and they'll continually do business with you. So.
Perfect. So, want to thank everybody, especially Nick, coming out this morning on this holiday, and us talking a little bit of football at the beginning, having a little fun with you guys. But this week is probably my favorite theme as we're kind of going to prospecting. Tomorrow we'll probably we'll be diving deep into other prospecting techniques, and then next week we're going to be specifically talking about getting your first customer. So all the work that you've done this whole week to kind of lead up to that. So if you enjoy this, please share this with somebody. If they like, comment, subscribe. Let us know. We'd love to kind of see the engagement with you guys. Catch us back on the replay at 12 and 3 p.m. Eastern Time on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Tomorrow, like we said, we're diving in deep into more topics. So want to thank our corporate sponsor, Daman at Centurion Trucking. He is looking for agents. So he actually has both models, which is cool that I want to talk about. He has both models. He has the cradle to the grave model, and he does have the sales, the hunter mentality with an operations team behind you to support you. So get a hold of him today. It's an amazing company. They definitely believe in people over profits. And with that being said, Jeff, always a pleasure, my brother. We'll see everybody tomorrow.
All right. Have a great day, guys.